So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto and Fairy Tail. So let's start the series. Two people in a tiny community of roughly 8,000 people were experiencing a lovely miracle. The couple had been waiting for their first child for 9 months. Would you mind taking a quick look at who these two might be? Approximately 22 years old, the man was 6'2", and had spiky golden hair that was reputed to be as dazzling as the sun. The hem of the coat he wore had a flame motif on it. In addition, he had on a long-sleeved navy blue muscle shirt, black sandals, and navy blue Anbu-style pants. This man, Minato, was currently keeping watch on a stunning woman with red hair. This redhead was around 21 years old, 5'10", and had gorgeous hair that reached her calves. Her skin tone was lovely and creamy, and her eyes were the most unusual color. They were pale purple. Sweat was streaming down the cheeks of this woman, who went by the moniker Naruto, who was lying on the floor. Minato, resting on a tree and occasionally glancing around, said, "Come on Naruto, just hold on a little bit longer, we're almost there." Naruto screamed, and clutched her huge tummy, saying, "I can't Minato, these two want out now. Find a cave or something, but I wouldn't be able to hold out much more." It was really lovely to witness new life, but regrettably, they were unable to live a simple existence. It all began almost a week ago when the King of Fiori himself announced an invasion to the tiny village of Hyde Ninja. The fact that the King of Fiori was friends with their village leader, the third headmaster, was advantageous. The lone survivor then informed them that the invaders were magicians, and they scrambled their civilian soldiers to check the invading force. Being one of the village's few magicians, Minato decided to use some of the others for surveillance. They chose to spy on the invaders to find out what they were pursuing, after realizing that they were worshippers of Zerv. They heard a drunken sorcerer exclaim that their community was emitting a potent magical signature. Minato wondered what that might mean, but when he was discovered, he and his party of 10 fled. To allow the enemy time to flee, 2 of his men remained behind to divert their attention. After reaching the settlement, Minato and his 8 surviving soldiers managed to alert the third headmaster in time for a massacre. The reason for this is because the group Minato went to check out was merely a ruse since, as they were preparing to engage that group, another group unexpectedly appeared from behind. From there, Minato's only concern was getting his 2-year wife out, so he sprinted in her direction. He discovered then that his unborn twins were their goal. Of the 6 that were there to take his wife, he managed to kill 4 of them. After that, he made the most difficult choice of his life. He left his village to be with his wife. They are currently fleeing their burning village in this manner, and we are unsure if anyone else survived. It escalated from awful to fucking dreadful since I was alone, exhausted, and my mom had just gone into delivery." Minato placed her right arm on his shoulder and pleaded, "Naruto, please just a little more, and we'll get to the shrine, so please just hold on." "I'll give Minato a try," Naruto muttered. After 10 more minutes or so of leisurely walking into the forest, they heard trees snapping behind them. "I found her, sir," they heard it, and cautiously turned to find a man shouting and pointing at them while dressed in black. He just received a terrified glance from his wife. "Shit. Naruto, go run, get to the shrine, and stay there. They don't know how to enter it, so you'll be safe, so wait, and I'll be there soon, okay?" Beep it. Her contractions prevented her from finishing. Minato stood in front of her and watched as she vanished, but all she did was nod and walk away, stumbling a little. He focused entirely on the adversary and saw as at least 20 or more of them came out of the woods and turned to face him. The apparent leader had a stick in his left hand and a strange sickly purple magic circle in his right, saying, "Step aside or you'll die here." "You'll have to kill me if you want to get to her," Minato declared resolutely. The man merely muttered, "As you wish," before aiming a green and purple beam at Minato. Naruto mother. After 5 more minutes of walking, Naruto came to a huge dead end. She heard an explosion and turned to look behind her, where smoke was rising. She turned back with tears in her eyes, put her palm on the dead end, and a golden magic circle materialized. She then disappeared in a burst of gold. Minato. The spouse of Naruto and the future village chief, Minato, lay in his own pool of blood, staring blankly. "What are we to do with his body, sir?" one of the people in cloak inquired. The man remarked as he left, "Leave him, he's not the reason we're here. We came to help Grimwar Heart get more brats for his little project, and I can't sense the woman anymore, so let's go, we're done here." "Yes, Lord Zero," the group shouted out. Minato spat out a glob of blood after they had all departed and began to turn over onto his stomach. Then he attempted to crawl in his wife's direction. Minato didn't get very far and just lay there, missing his right arm and a portion of his left leg. "I apologize, Naruto, but I will not be able to be there for you and our kids. Please be safe and know that I love you all." Before Minato passed away in the middle of the jungle, leaving nothing but the food of another wild animal, those were his last thoughts. Naruto mother. Mom discovered herself strolling down a well-lit corridor with walls and floors composed entirely of white marble. Her contractions forced her to halt every few seconds as she walked. She was surprised when a very calming voice called out to her from the hallway, "Come in, my child, so I may help you." "Is there?" Naruto inquired. "Come closer and let me look at you, someone who can help." Because the voice made her feel calm and content, Naruto mom chose to believe it. The air surrounding her grew cool as she approached, not frigid, but more like a light, cool wind. Upon reaching the finish, she noticed a massive white dragon resting on his front paws. Since she couldn't see any scales on the dragon, it appeared to be nude, and oddly, it had a feminine appearance. With its eyes closed, the dragon said, "Ah, so you're the one I felt was able to enter my shrine." "Why yes, ma'am, I apologize if I'm interrupting, but I had." She was unable to complete. "Yes, I am aware of your village and what transpired, but I am powerless to assist as I am no longer alive, and am merely a spirit trapped in this shrine, until my life force runs out," the dragon replied. Naruto mom collapsed to her knees and began to scream in agony before she could say anything more. The dragon said gently, "Calm down and breathe, child, I'll do my best to help. First, lay on your back and take off your dress so you can use it as a blanket." As instructed, Naruto mom removed her pregnancy gown and placed it on the ground while inhaling deeply. "There and now what Although her mother intended to speak her name, she was unaware of it. "I've gone by a lot of names, but I've always preferred the moniker Mother of Dragons, or simply Lily. Now, though, calm yourself and push a 3, okay?" Lily told her, obtaining a nod from Naruto mom. "Okay then. 1, 2, 3 push." After that, the Naruto mother started yelling and pushing. For a while, everything appeared to be going smoothly, and Lily continued to talk to Naruto mom in an effort to lessen her suffering. It wasn't until around 2.5 hours later that the difficulties started. "Why haven't any of my kids come out yet?" Miss Lily, Naruto mom shouted through the agony. Lily just glanced between her legs without responding, and what she saw alarmed her. "My child, I have some bad news." What news, Lily?" "Are my kids okay?" Naruto mom blurted out in concern. "The children appear to be tangled in their own umbilical cords as a result of what transpired tonight, and if we don't cut you open, they will perish because natural birth is no longer an option," Lily replied sullenly. "What the heck are you saying?" fearfully, Naruto mom inquired. "It means you won't survive after giving birth because of the blood loss. I can keep you alive for a few hours after, but I can't use my Sky Dragon healing arts to heal you, because I don't have a body anymore," Lily told her, regretfully. "Will they be alright?" The idea of not being there for her kids made Naruto mom cry. "I will regretfully have them leave for a while, child, because I'm running on the last bit of life force I have right now, and I'll completely disappear in 5 to 8 years, Lily remarked. In remembrance of her former childhood friend, Naruto's mother added, "Then, please, take them to a friend of mine who lives in Fiori, or show them how she'll take care of them. I'm sure. I can't guarantee anything, but I'll try. Are you ready now?" When she was done, she noticed Naruto's mother nod at her and take a long breath, her eyes blazing. "Ma'am, save my kids." As Lily finished speaking, a small magic circle appeared over her right pointer figure, changing from transparent to tangible, and she muttered something that her mother couldn't hear. Naruto mom was prepared for anything 1 minute, and then she was crying uncontrollably, due to the excruciating pain in her tummy, from having it torn apart, and Lily's claw digging into her to take her kids away. The first one is a boy child. The mother of Naruto was hardly able to gaze at her newborn son nor hear his tiny cry. Mom yelled, "And Naruto. H's N name. Why will be Naruto?" As Lily dug her claw into her again, she elicited another ear-splitting cry of agony. "Just hang in there a little longer, just long enough to name your second child," she murmured. Since it took her over 10 minutes to successfully remove her from Naruto mom, the second one proved to be a little more difficult and time-consuming. As she looked at her for the child's name, Lily told her, "Your second child is a girl." The mother of Naruto gasped before passing away after naming her second child Lucy, who was wailing uncontrollably. "LL Lucy. Her. Na name, WW will be L Lucy." Looking at the sobbing infants in her right clawed hands, Lily remarked, "Lucy and Naruto. What lovely names your mother chose for the two of you. But sadly I wasn't able to give her any more time with you. Her wounds were just too fatal." His sister was crying too, but she was attempting to reach for Naruto's mother instead. At the moment, Naruto was crying and groping for Lily's face. Looking at Naruto, Lily remarked, "You two will make fine mage one day. Perhaps I will take one of you as my student. You Naruto have the most amazing magic reserve I've ever seen, my young ones. However, your sister seems to have the most compressed magic power I've seen." As Lily stretched her wings and sent a roar to the ceiling, shattering the roof above, she said, "Lucy, I will take you to your mother's friend, because you will need a mother more than your brother, and I promise you that in time you two will meet again." She took Naruto mom's body, laid her on her back, and wrapped it in some garments she had laying around. Sigh. "I guess I'll try to find the person who has the slightest hint of your mother's scent, even though I don't even know where your mother's friend is." She then lifted off and flew through the air, passing over the now burned-out village of Hyde Ninja, and offered a brief prayer for the people who had been killed in the invasion. 3 days later. Lily had just realized that her remaining life force had been halved 3 days after she had left the temple. Her current estimate of her remaining years was between 4 and 5 years. For the majority of the journey, she had used one of her magical powers to keep the two children asleep, only pausing to change them and give them milk that she had managed to obtain from somewhere. Even though she was flying at the time, she was only able to catch a hint of someone who smelled a little bit like Naruto mom. She discovered a stunning woman with long blonde hair styled in a high bun who appeared to be in her early 20s. Right now, she was carrying a grocery bag down an empty road with a man whose blonde hair was slicked back, and she was dressed in a business skirt and top. Lily used one of her many wind charms to trap them both in an air bubble that also made it impossible for anybody to hear their screams because she didn't want anyone to see them. When they were taken into the air and floated for a time before landing in front of the one thing they never imagined seeing in their lives, both individuals were extremely terrified. A massive white dragon stood in front of them, seemingly amused as it gazed down at them. Lily reassured them, "Calm down, humans. I just want to talk to you too." However, she watched as the man moved in front of the woman. "What is it that you would like to discuss?" the man boldly stammered out. "I would like to know if the female behind you has ever met a woman named Naruto mom." The girl moved in front of the man and gave him a startled look as soon as she said that name. "Do you know her, Kushi? Where is she? Is she okay? Are you able to get me to her?" The woman began asking her a lot of questions. When Lily learned that this woman knew the red-headed mother, she noticed the concern in her eyes and became depressed. "I did know her, but before you ask me any more questions, let me tell you what happened to her." She started explaining the invasion as soon as she noticed her nodding, including how Naruto mom had invaded her shrine, and how she had assisted her in giving birth. "This is the reason I'm here now. To give you one of her children so you can raise her until the time comes for the brother and sister to be reunited." "I know," the woman exclaimed, "but let me take Kushi's body, please. I want to bury her in our hometown." "Of course, but in order to better convey my gratitude, I would like to know both of your names first." "My name is Jude Heartfilia, and this is my wife of more than a year, Layla Heartfilia," Jude replied, bowing slightly in deference to the dragon. As Lily laid Naruto mom's body in front of them, she smiled and said, "Well, Jude and Layla Heartfilia, please take care of little Lucy as it was Naruto mom's final wish, and never let her forget that in time she will see her big brother." Then, with her tail gently taking Lucy, Lily held her out for Layla to grab. "For the sake of Lucy's and Naruto's mothers, will you kindly take care of him?" Layla smiled at Lucy and held her to her chest as she asked. They nodded again as Lily told them, "Don't worry about my child. I will bring him to you to raise in 4 to 5 years, which is when I have a little less than a week to live." "Alright, then thank you once more, Miss Lily, for taking care of her. She would be very grateful to know that her kids will be taken care of." Lily suddenly vanished in a gust of wind brought on by her wing flap. "Yes, I know. Well, then I must be off, so farewell you two. And farewell to you as well, Lucy, for in time you will meet your brother again and be a true family." Jude and Layla watched her go, and after she was gone, Layla noticed a slight lump in Lucy's little makeshift blanket, which was created from what appeared to be a green dress. After looking it over and discovering a little priceless gem, Layla almost dropped Lucy. "Hey Jude. Look." Layla's desperate cry caused him to gaze at her, his eyes nearly exploding. "Oh my god." Jude stated, "With this, we can at last gain the independence we need to launch our own company." In response to her husband's smile, Layla replied, "I suppose the dragon wanted to help us after all, even if it was financially." Layla gripped Lucy a little more tightly as they stood there grinning at the direction Lily had gone. "Lily?" Then Lily headed directly toward a secluded area of Fiori, landing next to a large cavern and going inside. As Lily laid Naruto on a heap of leaves and observed him sleeping, she remarked, I haven't been here in a long time now. How long has it been? 5,000, maybe 6,000 years since I've been here." As Lily lay down beside him and yawned, she thought, "You are really fascinating, Naruto, to be able to sleep through all that. Any other newborn would have been crying the whole time." As I yawned once more and finally fell asleep, Lily remarked, "I know you'll grow up to be a very powerful magus. After all, you'll be trained by me, Lily, the first scale-less dragon, she who births every single dragon. Or as all other dragons and humans call me, the mother of dragons." 4 years later. As Lily watched the 4-year-old Naruto race around the clearing after a butterfly, she realized how quickly time had passed. "I think I only have a year left to live, so now would be the ideal moment to begin his training. My, how much he has grown in these past 4 years is truly amazing indeed. Not only him, but his magic reserve is through the roof." Watching him follow the butterfly around and eventually catch it, only to have it fly at his face, frightening him, Lily pondered. "Please come here, Naruto honey." When she called, Naruto halted his work to give her a quick glance and hurried over. "Yes, what is it, Mom Lily?" he asked in a startlingly loud voice for a 4-year-old. Naturally, that is to be anticipated, given that his parents are dragons who place a high value on knowledge. In an attempt to increase Naruto's IQ, Lily had practically spent day and night teaching him how to read and write like children twice his age. Since Naruto had a surprising talent for such things, it worked like a charm. Because his mother instilled it in him, he was able to read at a level that would be challenging for even 8-year-olds, and his handwriting was 10 years old. She insisted that he should be perceived as intelligent rather than a slob, and that tidy writing was an indication of intelligence. For this reason, she also spent time teaching him basic academic skills like reading, writing, math, and etiquette. Although Naruto detested math, she explained that he would need it when managing money, and that she didn't want him to be taken advantage of if she had any influence over the situation. She also described to him his real mother's appearance and behavior, but she was regrettably unable to elaborate, because she had only met her briefly. Despite his sadness, Naruto was glad to know that he had a sister who, in Lily's opinion, was 10 minutes younger than him. This meant that in order to be a good role model for his younger sister, he had an obligation to study everything he could. When she got a reluctant response, she went on, "Yes, honey, you remember how I told you that I would only be able to be with you for 4 or 5 years, right?" When Lily noticed that Naruto was about to cry, she quickly said, "Well, it seems like I only have 1 more year left in me. Now don't start panicking, Naruto, because from this day forward, I'm going to start teaching you how to utilize magic, so you can be ready for anything, okay?" "Okay, but how can I learn everything in a year, mama?" inquired Naruto. "No, that isn't true, but it's also one of the reasons I picked this location to be our home, sweetie." "Huh? Mama, what do you mean?" Naruto tilted his head to the left and questioned. "I built a special place in this cave that I don't often use, but I will use it to teach you now. This is my time distortion room, so it will be very helpful to us," Lily told him. "So, what exactly does it do?" Mama Naruto sighed as she stated, not understanding a word she had said. "Oh well, you see, a month out here is about 3 in the time distortion room, so our remaining time together is only about a year," Lily clarified. "Oh, I see now. When should we begin?" Mama Naruto grinned broadly as he spoke. "Right away, Naruto, because I'm going to take you to visit your sister after we're done so you may grow up with her. Who knows, maybe you could teach her a little magic, don't you?" Lily's statement caused Naruto to beam with joy upon learning that he will at last be able to meet his sister. "Alright, let's go." Naruto raced in an arbitrary direction and screamed. "Naruto, the cave is where the room is," Lily shouted, perspiring at his impetuous behavior. "Oh alright, sorry," Naruto murmured, blushing slightly in embarrassment. Lily replied as she made her way to the cave, "It's okay, now come on, we're burning daylight, the sooner we start training, the sooner we'll be able to make sure you're ready for anything." The two then proceeded to the far end of their cave, where an odd arrangement of magic circles was carved into the wall. When Lily touched it with her left claw, white light filled the cave. When it cleared, all that was visible to Naruto was white. "Alright, are you prepared to train, Naruto?" Naruto turned around at hearing his surrogate mother's voice change, and realized that she had transformed into a stunning young lady. He understood that his stepmother was attractive at the moment, despite the fact that he was too young to be interested in girls. Because there was a woman in front of him who appeared to be in her 20s and had white hair that reached her butt. Her skin tone was also white and pale, with occasional blushes. In addition, she had a large bust and brilliant yellow eyes. Her waist was neither too large nor too little, and her legs were long and slim. His mother appeared to be a goddess overall, and the fact that she was completely nude didn't help either. "Is it you?" Mama Naruto asked. "Yes, honey, it's me. You see, I have a human shape, but I didn't have the strength to maintain it in the real world. However, I do have that form here because I've preserved some of my power in case I ever need it, which is also a wonderful thing, isn't it?" Lily remarked as she was once more dressed in a burst of light. She was dressed in black spandex shorts and a basic black sports bra. "Alright, are you prepared to begin training?" Naruto. Lily put her right hand on her hip and smirked wickedly at him as she spoke. Knowing that the training would be challenging, Naruto swallowed his anxiety and worry and turned to face her. "Yeah, Mom, I'm ready," Naruto responded, glancing at her for guidance. As Lily said, Naruto became pale but nodded as he fell to the ground, tears streaming down his eyes. "Alright, then first we start off with physical training, so drop and give me 100 push-ups, sit-up, jumping jacks, squats, and I want you to run 10 laps around this place, you hear me?" "Why me?" Naruto asked himself as he followed his mother's instructions. 3 years later. Even though 3 years had gone by, Naruto only appeared to be a year older. When he asked his mother about it, she simply replied that his body grew in accordance with the time of the outside world, not this one. Lily was rather proud of Naruto because he had mastered her branch of Dragon Slayer magic, which covered nearly every elemental technique a Dragon Slayer could acquire. She also showed him her extensive library, which she had accumulated over many centuries. Naruto has been studying hard, learning Maker Magic, Heavenly Body, and Requip. She discovered then that Naruto was drawn to the Slayer arts. After all, he had used it to surprise her during one of her spars. She was so proud that day that she could still recall it as if it had happened yesterday. Rewind a year before. Lily had given Naruto permission to use any magic he desired on her, and the two were currently engaged in a fierce argument. Since Naruto was still too young to reach her head, Lily mocked, "Come on, you can do better than that, I know it." She stopped a roundhouse kick to her stomach. However, Naruto didn't let it affect him because he utilized his right foot as balance to raise his other leg as soon as she caught it. He used his hands as a second pair of feet and attempted to kick her beneath the chin. Lily simply turned her head to the right, allowing the foot to pass unnoticed. Then she also grabbed it and kicked him in the back, causing him to fall to the ground. Naruto gently stood up and turned to face her, who was smiling at him with laughter at his weak attempts to strike her. Naruto hurried over to her and swung his left arm at her exposed midsection, since he didn't like that expression. When the hand made contact, Lily returned and handed him back to the floor, leaving a crimson mark on his face. Having had enough, Naruto leaped to his feet, exhaled deeply, and unleashed one of his magic spells. White Dragon Rage. Without saying a word, Lily slammed her ice-covered fist into the floor, as Naruto unleashed his full-power roar at his mother, causing a massive wall of ice to spring forward and block his attack. Trying to think of a strategy to gain the upper hand in this spar, Naruto was panting fiercely. At that point, he had a half-bright notion and grinned, assuming it would work. He implemented his plan, and as soon as his mother's ice barricade collapsed, he hurried forward and attempted to remove her legs, in order to bring her to the ground. However, his mother leaped to her feet as he had anticipated, and he then used his hands to turn over and aim directly at her before launching his next blow. Ice God Bellow. His mother's eyes widened at the mere mention of his attack, and she was so taken aback that she was unable to avoid it. Before announcing his next move, Naruto emerged behind her, swinging down with both arms over his head, after she was smacked point-blank by the black ice tornado, and thrown soaring into the air. Going hammer for God. Then Lily felt as though 1,000-volt electricity was coursing through her body. She struck the floor really forcefully, and when she managed to glance up, she saw her son leaping up what appeared to be a lighting cannon. "You give up," Mom. Naruto pointed his move at her and requested. Naruto let out a weary moan and fell to the ground in tiredness as Lily nodded and smiled. "Dude, I'm exhausted," Naruto grumbled as he collapsed onto his back and struggled to breathe. "Naruto, that was incredible. When did you learn the art of God Slayer?" Lily brushed herself off and inquired. While ticking them off in his fingers, Naruto remarked, "I haven't finished learning them well, not all of them. I'm about 90% done. I think all I need is to learn White God Slayer arts, Shadow God Slayer arts, Water God Slayer arts, and the Wind God Slayer arts." "Wonderful. And are you aware of the other Slayer arts besides God and Dragon?" "What?" Lily inquired. As Naruto rolled up his sleeves and showed her the 2 tattoos on his left and right arms, which appeared to contain roughly 10 smaller ones inside each, he stated, "A little, but every time I learn a new Devil Slayer arts, I get a weird tattoo on my right and left arm." See, is it a bad mother?" Naruto asked. Lily told him, "No, it's not, son. It just demonstrates your mastery of it. When you have a son, it will be passed on to him without the need for him to study it as you are doing now. However, it will be a problem for him because if he is not careful, the marks will take over and turn him into a demon, so make sure to teach him, okay?" He nodded. "Alright, then let's go get some rest," Lily continued as she made her way back to the house that had seemingly materialized out of thin air. Flashback termination. Now, even though Naruto's look had changed slightly from that of a 5-year-old to that of a 7-year-old, they were now back within their cave home and outside the room. "Alright, Naruto, I'll give you some cash and take you to the town below, where you can buy enough food to last you a while." Even though Lily was still in her human form, she did appear frail and pale, and she was perspiring a lot. When Naruto took the money and put it in his re-equip space, which was extremely huge because he could fit his mother's library in it, he said to her, "Okay mom, but please don't push yourself, okay?" As Lily said, Naruto nodded and began to leave the cave and descend the mountain where they lived. "Don't worry honey, I still have a good 2 days left in the bucket, so go spend a day in the town, get what you need for I don't know a week or 2, okay? I'll take you about a week's worth of travel and leave you there, so you may enjoy the scenery, and also come up with a way to present yourself to your sister, okay?" Knowing that getting there would take roughly 2 hours, Naruto made the decision to use his lighting magic to get there more quickly, rather than walking the entire distance. In light of this, Naruto vanished in a shower of yellow light. After 1 minute, Rosemary Town. Rosemary was a lovely little town with simply families and farmers living there, without any wizards or guilds. It was a lovely, sunny day, and the folks were having a great time with their kids playing in the park. The elderly were grinning as they observed the younger generation having a good time. However, nobody was ready for a stream of lightning that descended from the sky and fell directly in the center of the park, frightening the living daylights out of the children. Everyone noticed a 5-year-old child sheepishly touching the back of his head when the lights went off. Naruto chuckled, "I apologize to everyone. I didn't mean to frighten you, but this is my first time in this village, and I wasn't sure if this was a good place to land." The elderly man waved it away as if it were nothing and remarked, "It's okay, young mage. Just don't do it again." Naruto only nodded and sprinted in the direction of the food scent, oblivious to the young girl his age staring at him with wide, amazed eyes. Naruto. Naruto noticed a lot of things he had never seen before as he hurried through the crowd, but he controlled his emotions since, at the moment, getting what he needed was more essential, because the sooner he finished, the sooner he could leave with his mother to travel to where his sister was. Buying everything he would need, including water, apples, milk, pre-made sandwiches, a few candy bars, orange juice, oranges, mangoes, kiwis, ham, bread, cookies, and chocolate muffins, Naruto went into store after store. Naruto was only purchasing items that he had heard his mother describe as sweet or delectable. After finishing, he was going to head back out of town the same way he had come when he ran into someone. Ow. Hey, look where you're heading, a woman's voice screamed at him, causing him to glance down at the irate Reed. I apologize for that. I was not looking where I was going. Please pardon me, Naruto replied as he assisted her in standing up. The girl just stared up at him, paused, took his hand, and got to her feet, still staring at him. With a hint of excitement, the girl said, "Hey, you're that kid that showed up in the playground in lighting, right?" Yeah. Naruto only noticed the girl's face light up with joy as she approached him and took his hands. "I promise I'll be the best student ever, if you can teach me how to use magic to please," the girl said. As she gazed at him with puppy dog eyes, Naruto gazed at her, his eyes wide. "What about your parents?" Though when Naruto questioned, her expression darkened and tears began to well up in the corners of her eyes. "Very deed beg, please take me with you. I want to leave and see the world. My mama and papa died in a fire when I was a baby. I've been living in the town's orphanage." He sighed and said, "Okay, I'll do it, but first, tell me your name." "Mine is Naruto." Urza pushed out her chest in an attempt to look, saying, "Urza is the name, so don't forget it." "No last name?" Then Naruto raised an eyebrow in question. He didn't mind because he didn't have one either, not because his mother had forgotten to tell him. Additionally, his biological mother never disclosed her last name to his adoptive mother. "Since my entire family passed away, no one was able to give it to me, so they never bothered to look for it. Since you also don't have one, why ask for mine?" Urza retorted that she was attempting to conceal her grief at not even having that to commemorate her parents. "So, does it sound like a plan if you come up with one for me, and I come up with one for you?" In her tiny mind, Naruto was proposing because she had witnessed it happen numerous times, so when he asked, Urza blushed a little. Or so she believed, because the only instance she witnessed was when a teenage couple called each other pet names, and she assumed they were getting married right away. "Alright, so how are we going to accomplish this?" Urza blushed cutely and stammered out, then began to play with the dirt, keeping her gaze fixed on the ground, and using her pointer fingers. Urza looked at Naruto and nodded as he stated, "Well, let's look at each other and see what comes to mind first when we look at each other." They gazed at one another for 10 minutes, looking up and down, and occasionally circling one another. Adults passing by thought it was adorable to see two 5-year-olds observing one another. "I understand," Naruto replied, causing Urza to stop thinking and turn to face him. "Alright, what did you get?" "Your hair was the first thing I noticed when I first saw you," Naruto remarked, snatching a little piece and stroking it between his fingers, causing Urza to flush at the intimacy. "Really? How about my hair?" Urza looked into his eyes and inquired. "I was drawn to your hair color. Scarlet." "Yes, I like it, Urza." "Urza scarlet, yes, doesn't that sound good?" Then Naruto asked her. Urza, on the other hand, took hold of her hair, glanced at it, and then turned back to him before grinning and blushing slightly. "Scarlet. Urza scarlet. I like it," Urza replied, grinning tearfully at him. Even though he had only recently met her, Naruto felt driven to make her smile as though it would somehow benefit him. He simply grinned at her, delighted to see her happy. Urza wiped away her tears and replied, "I think I also have one for you." She was glad to finally have a last name to share with others, and for some reason, this boy gave her a sense of security and happiness, as if nothing could harm her as she stayed with him. "What exactly is it?" Urza said, "Naruto Hiwa," causing Naruto to turn to face her. "Hiwa?" Naruto asked. Urza clarified, "Yes, it means peace and harmony." "Well, even though I just met you, I feel at ease just being around you, so I thought it suited you." Urza's face brightened even more when she said, "Hiwa him." "Yeah, I like it. Okay, then from now on I'm Naruto Hiwa." Naruto joked, "Well, let's go celebrate our new names, shall we, Miss Scarlet?" "Why definitely Mr. Hiwa," Urza retorted. They both chuckled as they made their way to an unidentified eatery to celebrate. After arriving at a basic hut that offered barbecue, they had a pleasant lunch together. Both of them were really full as they exited, so they just proceeded to stroll around and talk about whatever. Urza became a little anxious at the prospect of visiting his family, after Naruto explained to her what he would teach her during their trip to see his sister. However, Urza merely informed him about the village and its reputation for tranquility. However, an unexpected explosion near the town center startled Urza and sent Naruto into full mage mode. Naruto took her hand and they began to flee, but they were soon stopped by strange staffs and men wearing dark cloaks. The man was unable to finish, saying, "Hey, we have two of Wind Dragon Rage." The trio of them were flung backwards by Naruto's tremendous hurricane force wind blast. "Come on, Urza, we must find a way out. This is an invasion, not a coincidence." Over the noise of the yelling crowd, Naruto let out a scream. "But what did we do to them, and why?" Urza let him pull her around as she asked. "I'm not sure, but we must." Urza saw Naruto fly through the air, but he didn't finish because he was startled by a green plasma blast. He emerged from the rumbling of the structure he destroyed and appeared in front of her, just as she was going to dash toward him. Naruto told her, "Urza, I need you to go take as many with you as you can, leave them to me." "But," she began, but his look cut her off. She flinched as Naruto screamed, "This is no time to argue, so do as I say, okay? Go save anyone you can and leave. I'll be right behind you, I promise." Urza froze for 10 more seconds, then nodded and fled, but not before yelling, "I will never forgive you if you die here." Urza let out a scream as she fled down an alley and vanished. Before being silenced by Naruto's iron fist, a man questioned, "Are you kids done with your little soap opera?" He had learned from his mother how to control his emotions and maintain composure in combat. Even though he appeared brave on the surface, he was terrified, but he knew that he had to be strong for Urza and everyone else in this community. He will make a big sacrifice for Lord Seraph at the tower, so why you little bit of shit? Everything was a haze once Naruto spotted 10 to 15 blasts of plasmas heading directly for him. Later on, even though his head, arms, and legs hurt right now, he thought he heard a call only a moment ago. Naruto. There it was. Nah. To who might it be? Naru, he said, recognizing it. Naruto. Then he realized that the voice belonged to Urza. When his brain was a bit less hazy, Naruto stated, "Naruto, I'm so glad you're okay. What happened?" "I was frightened for a moment." Urza embraced him as she asked. While massaging his templates, Naruto remarked, "Ugh, I don't remember. But what I do is I punch one of them, and then they all fired their staffs at me and then nothing." "In any case, Urza, where are we?" Naruto inquired. "On a boat that belongs to them," Urza replied, drawing Naruto's attention. "And where are we going?" An elderly man who was sitting directly next to him and grinning at him replied, "The Tower of Heaven." "Who are you?" Naruto inquired. "This is Rob. He assisted me in finding you," Urza replied. "Oh well, thank you," Naruto murmured, bowing his head slightly in appreciation. Rob looked down at them sadly and said, "No thanks are necessary, my child. Come and sit down. There is nothing we can do now." "What do you mean that I could bust us out if I use my magic?" Naruto asked. Since there was nothing else to do, Naruto and Urza scowled and agreed to listen. "Not that easy, child, for those cuffs on your hands and legs prevent you from using magic at all, so please sit down and let me tell you a story about the most amazing guild in all of Fiore." "Old man, what guild would that be?" Naruto questioned him. Rob informed them, "Oh, this guild is called Fairy Tail, and it's not just a guild. It's a family." Urza and Naruto both sat up a little at that point, eager to learn more about the guild, which was more than simply a place to find employment. It was a large family. "Now pay close attention, okay? It all began with our first master, Mavis Vermilion." They listened to his tale of Fairy Tail the entire journey, and pondered what it would be like to be a part of it. The elderly man had asked them to forget about the tower for the time being. What impact will this have on Urza's and Fairy Tail's story? My buddies, you'll have to wait until the next time. Right now, Naruto and Urza were seated in front of the elderly man who was narrating Fairy Tail to them. "Hello, elderly man. Where is this Fairy Tail?" Naruto questioned him while he fiddled with his handcuffs, attempting to figure out how to take them off. "Why is Magnolia Town located at the far end of the city?" Rob inquired. "If what you told us is true, old man, I'm considering joining." Urza slapped him over the head and said, "Don't call him Rob or even Grandpa Rob. He really did help us." Rob simply observed them and grinned at the sight in front of him, glad to see them happy even in such a setting. As Rob helped Naruto up, he added, "How about this, child? When we finally leave, I'll take you to Fairy Tail myself and ask the master to let you join." "Grandpa Rob, would you really do it for us?" With stars in her eyes, Urza asked. "Really? Don't be alarmed." Naruto nodded and scratched his head at him, while Urza grinned. They felt the boat stop at that point, and Urza clung to Naruto as he moved in front of him. 5 of those magicians descended and began pushing the detainees from the boat. Less than a minute later, Naruto leaped up and kicked Urza in the head, sending him falling and forcing him to break through the boat as they attempted to catch him by the hair. Everyone, including Rob, appeared taken aback by that, and the other wizards became frightened upon seeing it. "I'll kill you with my bare hands if you dare touch her," Naruto let out a roar. Then the other magicians threw a stream of lightning at him with what appeared to be a floating ball. At that moment, they all saw something that took them all by surprise. Naruto unconsciously got a weird tattoo over his heart after swallowing the light as if it were nothing. "Stay back," Naruto muttered, adopting the position his mother had taught him. "I may not be able to use magic, but I'm still a dragon slayer for a reason." The wizards merely retreated, and Rob moved ahead of them. Neither of them realized a blast of plasma was approaching from behind them until it was too late. They turned around as Naruto yelled. They witnessed Naruto fall to the ground after being struck by more than a dozen plasma beams. Urza yelled as she approached him and placed his right arm over her shoulder to assist him up. "Are you not a feisty little brat?" A massive mage pointed his staff at them and uttered those words. Another said, "Get moving before I decide to practice my aim on you 3. Rob remarked, "Okay, we're moving," as he grabbed Urza and Naruto and left. They were forced up a hill to what appeared to be a construction site after being driven down the ramp. As Rob had Naruto in his arms, Urza stayed close to him and clung to his frayed trousers. "I'm afraid," Urza moaned. "Don't worry, Urza, no one will harm you as long as I'm here," Naruto complained, snatching her hand off Rob's arm. Urza nodded and grinned at him, feeling somewhat comforted to have Naruto with her. As they were brought down, they observed dozens of cages, each of which could house up to 12 inmates. Okay, guys, this is your new house. Oh, and there's a bucket in the corner if you need to use the restroom. After pushing them into a cage, one of the magicians let out a laugh. Urza tore one of the 2 blankets that were available to use as temporary dressings, after noticing Rob laying Naruto on the ground. Gramps, will he be okay? Urza looked at Naruto with concern in her eyes as she questioned. Don't worry, my love. He will be alright. I doubt that this will hold him down for very long, because I've heard that dragon slayers are very tough and stubborn. Grinning, Urza took Naruto's hand and sat on his right, grinning down at him. Naruto glanced at her after waking up several minutes later than expected. I suppose this is a poor moment to let you know that my mother is waiting for me outside. Naruto made a joke. Yes, but won't she come seeking for you if you don't come? back Rob inquired. No, I was going to be taken to my sister by my mother, who only has 2 days left to live. I understand. Rob was aware that Naruto's mother was no longer on the list of potential rescues. Rob then watched him return to his slumber, while Urza lay down next to him, cuddled up to him, and also fell asleep. Rob went to sleep next to them in order to keep an eye on them, thinking, don't you two worry, I'll protect you two with my life, and I promise you that you'll see Fairy Tail one day very soon. Lily's cave. The mother of all dragons, Lily, was quite anxious. Why, you ask? Well, over 12 hours ago, her adopted son departed to gather supplies. Like his biological mother's house 5 years prior, the town was completely destroyed by fire when she flew there after changing into her dragon form. To make matters worse, she discovered that she had lost half of her life power when she changed into her dragon form. The first dragon, Lily, is now standing over the flaming settlement, disappearing into the wind. She sincerely regretted not being able to bring the brother and sister back together, since she knew she would never see Naruto again. I hope you're safe, Naruto honey, because I won't be able to help you this time. Darn it, just darn it. Since you are the real prince of the dragons, I know you will be able to find your sister and find a way out of this. I love you, Naruto. Before she entirely disappeared into the wind and was never seen again, those were her final thoughts. Although she knew she would never survive with her meager life force, she was aware that her son had been taken there by the fragrance. Naruto after 1 week. Since the guards were constantly attempting to harass Urza, it had been a difficult week for Naruto. Naturally, before then, Naruto usually stepped in, but it always ended poorly. For example, when they made him work in the morning and her in the afternoon, he once discovered 3 guards encircling her. Rewind 5 days before. Naruto was just returning to work after working non-stop since daybreak. He wasn't expecting someone to return to the cage because he knew Rob and Urza worked the night shift. Give me up. Assist. Since it was Urza's scream, Naruto gave it his whole attention. He rushed to it right once and discovered that 2 men were holding her down, while the third one seemed to begin taking off his clothes. Calm down, girl. It will be enjoyable, The one on top laughed. Urza was trying to defend herself when Naruto noticed the tears in her eyes. Since he wouldn't be able to harm them sufficiently while wearing cuffs, he stared at them. However, Naruto dropped everything and rushed in their direction as soon as he heard the clothing being torn. Ah! The large pig on top of Urza flew back as the mages turned to see who had screamed. When they turned to face the culprit, Naruto was staring at them with unbridled rage. You tiny brat, why? The fat one responded, I'll show you to stay out of our business, as he stood up. Without listening, Naruto lunged for the person holding Urza's legs, and kicked him so forcefully that the other 2 people heard his neck snap. He wasted no time in giving the man who was holding her arms an uppercut, causing him to snatch a few teeth. The fat man lunged for his staff, but Naruto quickly sprang on top of him and began savagely punching him. Never again dare you touch her. As he grabbed his left arm and snapped it like a twig, Naruto screamed. In response to the man's cry and attempt to flee, Naruto jumped on his head and buried it in the dirt. The final one, who was petrified in his place, was frightened since all he saw was a dragon roaring at them. He fled as Naruto turned to face him, since he didn't want to tamper with the dragon. When Naruto saw this, he attempted to kill him, just as he had killed the other 2, but stopped when he felt pressure on his back. Stop Naruto please. I am okay because of Wyu, so please stop, you're scaring me. Urza wept, causing Naruto to instantly calm down and turn to embrace her, where she sobbed uncontrollably. When Naruto noticed that her flimsy dress was ripped to pieces, he withdrew and removed his shirt, which he then handed to her, and instructed her to put on. He waited for her to finish changing, turning to give her some solitude. Everything done, and Naruto. Urza, are you okay? He inquired. Urza gave him a tiny smile as she nodded. Yes, thank you Naruto. They did nothing but tear my clothes off. She gave Naruto another hug, and he gave her another, a little too forcefully. I'll take care of you while you sleep, Urza. Don't worry, I won't let anyone near you. Urza said to him, oh okay, I'll try, as she went to her rock-like pillow and lay down to sleep. That night, Naruto remained motionless and remained awake, observing the guards as they went by. Since the dead guards were still there, Rob told him what had transpired when he returned. Rob used this chance to steal the guards' shirts, so the children would have extra clothing and blankets. From that point on, Naruto never left Ursa's side. Even when the guards attempted to make her stay, he always took her with him when he went to work. The following day, however, Naruto was seized and hauled to the middle of the tower, while Rob and Ursa watched, demonstrating his indestructibility. The following day is still a flashback. When Ursa woke up the following day, Naruto checked her over to make sure she was really okay, and Rob also offered assistance. For the umpteenth time, Ursa whined, "I said I'm fine, Naruto, really." Rob looked at her wounded ankles and wrists and added, "We know, dear, but we have to make sure, okay?" Rob and Naruto turned to see what had scared Ursa after she nodded and turned pale. The surviving guard behind the head guard, who was standing outside their cell, had a black eye and a bloody-looking handkerchief in his mouth. The head guard only said, "Take him." In case they were pursuing her, Naruto moved in front of Ursa. They weren't because they attacked him directly, grabbed him by the hair, struck him in the stomach, and then pulled him out. Naruto, Rob and Ursa both shouted as they followed. They watched as they dragged him to the middle of the tower, where they saw all of the remaining slaves, curious about what had transpired. "I'm a kind person, am I not? I mean, I provided you food and clothes when I could have easily let you starve and forced you to work naked, but I didn't, so why do you all keep fighting me? I've learned that this youngster attacked and killed 2 of my guys. The crowd, terrified of what the head guard would do to a 5-year-old youngster, heard him beg aloud. "I'm going to show you all how much of a nasty guy I can be if you don't follow the rules, though, because even I recognize that a penalty is required here," he shrieked the final line. Everyone stared in terror as 10 men, not 1, not 2, not even 3, drew their whips and began striking Naruto with them. Unfortunately, each whip had 5 blades at the end, which made it even more terrible for poor Naruto. Ursa and Rob looked on helplessly as Naruto's back was torn apart by the whips each time they struck him. They saw that he was unable to even scream in agony due to the extreme pain. Over the course of an hour, they all witnessed the 10 men beat his bare back, his claws sticking into the pole they had chained him to, and his blood staining the ground red. But his gaze is what everyone remembers. He didn't scream or plead for it to stop. Instead, he glared at the head guard with such hatred that even he winced at the children's behavior. He was going to be thrown off the platform after the chief guard freed him when they finally halted, but Naruto said something that truly frightened him. "When the time comes for us to regain our freedom, I will personally demonstrate to you what a true demon is capable of. Torture me, beat me, hate me, do whatever you want to me, but you will never break me." The head guard hastily left the stage after he shouted those words, not believing the child could still say that after what he had done to him. He was quickly approached by Rob and Ursa, who examined him before Rob transported him back to their cell. As long as the slaves received the message, the guards didn't give a damn and just resumed their activities. Rob tore up the last blanket in their cage and began dipping it into the water dish they had, which they allegedly got once every 2 days. Ursa sobbed as Rob held his hands and cleaned his terrible wounds as best he could. "Is Grandpa going to be alright?" With tears running down her cheeks, Ursa inquired. Rob put the rag on his back and then tore his own shirt, saying, "He'll be fine. I'm sure Ursa is a fighter after all, and he did promise you that he'd be there for you, so I'm sure he'd never break his promise to you." Then he knotted it like a bandage around Naruto's front and around his torso to hold the other cloth. To keep his wound clean and allow him to sleep with Ursa on his left side, he laid him face down on the floor after it was finished. Ursa sobbed herself to sleep, believing that she was to blame for his state. As Rob watched them go to sleep, he made a self-promise to never allow this to happen again. Flashback termination. NRDO. After 3 full days, he finally recovered, but the guards didn't give him any time off and sent him back to work. However, not before bringing Ursa along, which infuriated the guards, who believed the child had learned his lesson. Ursa's anxious voice jolted him out of his reverie, saying, "Naruto, calm down or you can get hurt." In order to show that he was okay, Naruto took her rock and carried it with his. "Don't worry, Ursa. Would you please settle down for me?" Ursa gave him the puppy dog look method as she said this. Ursa knew she had him completely under her control when she did it, so Naruto winced when he saw it. Ursa smiled at Naruto as he gave up and said, "Okay, fine, I'll take it easy." She joyfully exclaimed, "Thank you. Come on, our shift is over." Grandpa Rob said he'd tell us more about Fairy Tail. She then grabbed his right hand and hurried to their living area. After 3 years. Even though a lot has happened since they were brought here 3 years ago, Ursa and him still had a close bond. Additionally, they made new acquaintances in the shape of a 4-year-old girl named Milana, a 7-year-old boy named Wally Buchanan, another kid their own age named Simon, and a 5-year-old boy named Sho. Since he taught Wally, Sho, and Milana how to read, write, and do math, Naruto became the big brother of the foursome. The tattoo above his heart turned out to be a magic storage rune, and the more magic he saved, the greater the result would be. Naturally, he told them everything, and they just had one question. How would that benefit them? Naruto continued by telling them that he would be able to break his restraints and experience a spike in magic for a predetermined period of time, if he stored enough magic. Since they knew he would be able to assist everyone in being released from this misery, they were all taken aback by it. "What are you going to read tonight, big brother? What?" Milana inquired. Naruto discovered that the cuffs only had half the effect on him compared to the others, because he was a dragon slayer. He could so use his recoup space, but that was all. Even yet, he had everything he needed, so that was more than plenty. After 3 years, he discovered that the food he had purchased in Rosemary was still there and functional. He would therefore occasionally give Sho, Milana, Wooly, Simon, and Urza a portion of his chocolate bars when the guards weren't there. Every morning, he even offered them a small sip of his milk and occasionally a banana. Rob was aware that Naruto loved the children because he would protect them from the guards, even if it meant accepting their punishment. They were all quite saddened by this since, if he could, he would never let them be touched. Naruto had been beaten, forced to go weeks without food, submerged in freezing water for hours, and forced to spend days in a pitch-black room surrounded by his own squalor. However, he never cracked. Rather, the guards observed that his determination to persevere was motivating the slaves. "Well, Milana, what about the little Red Riding Hood?" she smiled when Naruto asked her. "Eh? Big brother, may we also have more chocolate?" Milana questioned him. Since it was nighttime, Naruto warned her, "Only a little, okay, since I don't have a lot left." She nodded and hurried back to their cell. When he arrived, he spotted Wooly, Milana, and Sho huddled behind Simon. Urza was perplexed until she noticed him approaching. "Naruto, come take a look." "Urza, what is it?" A youngster, perhaps 8 or 9 years old, with dark blue hair and an odd tattoo over his right eye, was staring at them curiously when he arrived at the door. "Hey, I'm Joel Fernandez. Do you guys know where I stand?" the new child inquired. Since they knew that Naruto was in command here and Rob was merely sitting in the corner and amusedly observing them, the children all turned to look at him. Naruto took a step forward and gave him a head rub before turning to face him and letting out a sigh. "I'm Naruto Hiwa, and this is Urza Scarlet. I suppose you could call us the big brother and sister of our little group." "Nice to meet you, Joel," Naruto added, extending his right hand. "Yes," Urza informed them, "and this is Wooly, Milana, Sho, and Simon saying hello, you guys." The four said, "Hi, hello, sup, hey," which caused Joel to nod in their direction. "Nice to meet you all, but could you please tell me where I am again?" In response, Joel looked Naruto in the eyes and shook his hand. Naruto rubbed his neck and remarked, "Oh well. How do I say this? This place is called the Tower of Heaven." "To put it simply, we are slaves," Simon told him directly. What Joel's eyes widened like saucers as he screamed. "Yeah, we were all forcibly removed from our homes and brought here, but we still try to make the most of it," Naruto chuckled. "How can you say that so calmly? You should be trying to get out of here." "We're slaves," Joel yelled at Naruto, forcing Simon to move aside. Since Simon was the most composed and reserved member of the group, it was strange to see him looking so angry. When he was furious, only Urza and Rob knew. To him, Naruto was like a brother since he was teaching him about magic and how to use it to find his younger sister. "You don't want to talk to Naruto like that, do you understand?" Simon informed him more than he had inquired. He raised his voice to the blonde, and Joel just stared at him, wondering why he was so upset. "However, you people ought to be attempting to get out of here rather than staying." "Who's to say we aren't?" Joel, after placing his arm around Simon's shoulder, who was a full head higher than him, Naruto asked. "Very well, then what is your grand scheme to free us?" Joel asked sarcastically. Because of Joel's treatment of the one person who loved them and treated them like family, the others were truly beginning to dislike him more and more. That is, excluding Rob and Urza, as Urza's treatment and fussing over them made her seem like a mother or big sister. Since Rob usually merely told them stories and spoiled them by shielding them from Urza's wrath on occasion, he was like a grandfather to them. In contrast, Naruto was like a father to them, making sure they were secure and risking his life to protect them when they got into difficulty with the guards. Urza chastised him whenever he was seen feeding them candy, telling them to eat more healthfully and not only sugar. "As you can see, Joel, I am capable of using magic, but I am unable to do so on account of the cuffs." As Milana nodded her head at him, Naruto said, "I've been storing magic in a special rune I have on my body for about a year and a half. When the time comes, I'll unleash that saved up magic, breaking my cuffs and giving me full access to my magic, so I can get us out. Right, and since your older brother is the strongest person I know and can beat you up very quickly, you had better be kind to him," Milana stated in a silly way, which made Rob laugh. "Well, how long will it take?" Joel questioned him. Naruto informed him, "About another year, maybe a year and a half." "Alright, enough about this. How about I tell you all another tale?" Naruto declared as a book materialized in his grasp. At that moment, Joel noticed that everyone in the nearby cells immediately shifted to be nearer to theirs. "Naruto-sama, which one is it tonight?" From a cell across from him, a fellow slave inquired. "Please refrain from referring to me as Sama," Naruto said. "It will be the little Red Riding Hood this time," Naruto informed them all, which made many of the children in other cells smile. "Well, take a seat and pay close attention, okay? There was a little girl once." Simon leaned against the wall, but Joel could see that he was listening, while Milana, Sho, and Wooly sat in front of him and listened intently. He couldn't take his eyes off the Redhead, though he noticed that she appeared to be a bit too near to this Naruto. Despite having just recently met Naruto and Urza, Joel couldn't help but feel envious of their closeness. For the time being, Joel chose to sit in the back and listen to the story. After 6 months, many things had gone wrong since Joel joined them. To start, he and Naruto were often fighting over how to do anything small. Urza and the others witnessed Joel's attempts to instill mistrust in Naruto. But because of everything he did for them, the others were fiercely loyal to him, therefore he always failed. Even more kids were added to Naruto's small group. One was a 5-year-old child who had a snake and preferred to be named Cobra, but his real name was Eric. He was Sho's age. Another was a strange 5-year-old youngster who was fascinated with speed and was just up racer, since he didn't want to reveal his identity. Last but not least was the 6-year-old girl who was devoted to Naruto like a crazy groupie. Everyone else simply accepted her nickname, Angel. The final one was Richard, Wooly's older brother, who was 2 years older than Urza and Naruto. When Wooly first saw him, he had not stopped crying, and they were now practically inseparable. It was occasionally amusing to watch Milana and Angel quarrel over who Naruto liked more. Since they all looked up to Naruto and could sense his overwhelming power even though almost all of it was kept away, Sho, Cobra, and Racer became close friends. However, Joel became apart from them, and Rob and Naruto were occasionally concerned when they saw him plotting his escape from this location. However, we now see Rob, Urza, and Naruto conversing, while the children played together in their tiny jail. That is, until they noticed Joel dash down the hallway, open the cell doors, and quickly enter. "What's wrong?" Rob questioned him. With his hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath, Joel said, "I thought I had found a way to get out of here, and I went to check it out before coming to tell you guys, but some guards found me out and chased me here. They didn't see me, but I think they're going to come and check it out anyway." The fact that he would do something so foolish and endanger their family astonished and infuriated Urza and the others. Naruto moved forward to end the quarrel before any of them could yell at him. "You're a really dumb kid, aren't you, Joel?" They all heard the gate smash open, and turned to stare at it before he could respond. There, they discovered the head guard grinning at them. "Look what we have here, guys. I think we found our culprits. Take the red and the blue-haired one, please," the man shouted. When Naruto heard this, he tried to grab Urza to stop them from taking her, but at least 10 guys smashed him onto the ground. "Let me go, you jerks. I will not allow any of you to touch her," Naruto screamed, attempting to escape but failing. He saw Urza being pulled away while he resisted, and he also saw his buddies in the corner with 4 guards brandishing staffs at them. Naruto Urza tried to reach him with her right hand and shouted. Naruto attempted to follow suit, but was unable. He watched as they took her, and the head guard laughed before slamming his boot into his face and knocking him unconscious. A few hours later. About half an hour later, Naruto woke up and began pounding on the bars of his cell while shouting uncontrollably as he tried to get out to find Urza. The kids sobbed into Rob's pants, not understanding what was happening, and they all blamed Joel, because he was the one who caused this to occur in the first place. Naruto slipped down the wall with tears streaming down his face after wailing and pounding his body against the bars for over 2 hours. Before they heard the cell doors open, he stayed in that position for around 3 hours. When they all looked up, Urza was dumped inside before the guards began to leave, laughing at her suffering. Urza before sprinting in her direction, all 10 of them let out a scream. Urza's missing right eye was the last thing Naruto wanted to see when he arrived at her first. Everyone began to sob more till they felt a lot of pressure and turned to see a terrifying scene. Naruto's face, arms, back, neck, and portions of his chest and sides were all covered in gold scales. His nails grew to approximately 2 or 3 inches, and his hair seemed to gleam in the little light they had down there. His eyes turned steely blue with slits in the pupils, and his already pointed and conspicuous fangs grew even more apparent. But it was the golden cloak surrounding him and the waves of magic power he was releasing that drew their attention. They watched as his handcuffs broke. And Naruto Urza finally began to regain consciousness and asked out. After glancing down at her for a moment, Naruto became even more irate at what she said next. She tried to get to her feet and said, "And Naruto. They're going to kill all of us." And with that, Naruto blasted a blast of wind toward the jail door, blowing them away. "Follow me closely, you guys. We're getting out of here today." Naruto went to face Urza before they left, took off her eye patch, tore out his own right eye, placed it in her socket, and used his Sky Dragon Slayer power. "Why did you do that?" Big Brother Milana questioned him. Before heading outside, everyone follows them. "If I can help you guys, I will do it. Losing one eye is nothing for me." They managed to make it outdoors where everyone was staring at them after running in the direction of the exit. When the head guard spotted them, he was going to make fun of them, but then he noticed Naruto and became alarmed. After a good 5 minutes of Naruto staring at him, everyone suddenly noticed him inhaling deeply. Rob, the children, and everyone else were wondering what he would do. He opened his mouth again, answering their queries. White Dragon Rage. When he launched his strike on the tower, everyone saw how powerful it was. The strike missed the chief guard by at least 1 foot, leaving him terrified. He almost puked at the enormous hole in the tower, which was roughly 10 feet wide, when he turned to face the damage. But Naruto didn't stop there, oh no, he immediately pivoted and launched another attack in the direction of the boat, which he knew was there. Or Ice Dragon. All the slaves watched with joy as the ice tornado smashed into the doors that held them captive, destroying the entire wall and door in the process. Oh, take it again. It's yours. It's time for you all to regain your freedom. When Naruto shouted, there was a roar of gratitude and happy tears. At last, the guard appeared to have lost his temper and began attacking the escaping slaves. When Naruto saw this, he acted immediately. Take everyone and go, Urza and Rob. I'll be right behind you. He rushed to the front of the assault and met it head on before they had a chance to respond. And RDO Rob and Urza screamed. All the guards halted and stared as the blonde-haired child consumed their inferno after they heard crunching and gulping coming from within the flaming onslaught. Dude, that was awesome. I had almost forgotten what it would taste like, but now I'm fired up. When Naruto ran toward the guards, Urza and the others witnessed why dragon slayers were so amazing and feared. Attack of the Fire Dragon Wing. Dragon Frozen Claw with ice. He would always consume the guards' attacks, so they couldn't hit him no matter how hard they tried. While some were frantically attempting to strike him and keep him away from them, many of them were fleeing while they could. Shadow Dragon Rage. Holy Ray. Urza and the others managed to reach the boats and begin preparing to depart despite everything. Urza had the notion that they ought to wait for Naruto, but she changed her mind after remembering his appearance. Hey everyone, get on board as soon as you're done, okay? Don't try to go back or look back from the boat's edge, she let out a shriek. Alright, the standard response was. What are you thinking, big sister? Big brother is still there, Milana questioned her. Milan and Naruto is a dragon slayer, so don't worry. I know he'll return, but for now he's buying us time to leave, so we'll do that. When he realizes we're far from here, he'll leave and join us, Urza assured her. We're prepared to depart from Urza, a random slave informed her. Then go ahead and set sail. The man simply fled since he was a little afraid of her at the moment due to her abrupt mood swings. The boat soon began to move, and Urza turned to see the Tower of Heaven getting smaller. The knowledge that the nightmare was finally gone made him grin. For the time being. Then RDO. The top guard had already been murdered by Naruto's point-blazing dragon roar, and he was currently pounding the living daylights out of every guard he could get his hands on. In order to ensure their safety, he was now pausing and waiting for the boats to move a bit farther away. He nearly missed the magic ray being launched at their location, and he was on the verge of failing. When he landed, he glanced to see who it was and spotted Jul. He was able to move quickly, get in front of it, and eat it all. Jul, why on earth are you doing this? Naruto shouted at him. Instead of answering with words, Jul just lifted his right hand and made a magic circle emerge while grinning wildly. With a tingling sensation of danger, he followed his mother's advice in this kind of situation. A second ago, he saw a pillar of darkness appear exactly where he was, so he followed his instincts and leaped to the right just in time. Knowing that Jul had just attempted to kill him, he stared at him. Alright, then no words. With that, Naruto took action. The Iron Dragon Club. He witnessed Jul do something odd as his attack almost missed. Jul was burning yellow for the following second before vanishing from view and emerging above him. Naruto allowed his instincts to take control, and managed to dodge just in time, but not before snagging Jul's leg and striking his thigh with a forceful elbow. The only diversion Jul needed to use his lightning speed to move in front of him and land the finishing blow was when he shouted in agony and clutched at his left leg. Crumbling Earth Dragon Fist. Jul was unable to breathe as the attack hit him in the stomach, and he flew in the direction of one of the few nearby standing walls. On top of Jul, however, the wall collapsed. When Naruto realized he was the cause of Urza's injuries, he decided to deactivate his dragon force, rather than rush to his aid. A little 8-year-old girl appeared and smiled at him as he was leaving, smiling and covering her mouth with her sleeve. Naruto Hiwa, huh? The girl kicked Jul in the face and said, "You really are an interesting one, my dear. How I wish I could be using you instead of this useless toy." Jul didn't even reply. "Maybe we can play together in the future, but for now I'll be content with the second rate." Two guys then materialized behind her and took Jul in their arms. "What should we do now, ma'am?" the first one inquired. Both wore masks with what seemed to be one eye in the middle. The girl stated as she left, "Let's return to headquarters for the time being, and inform Master Hades of his small unsuccessful project." "Yes." Lady Altier both gave a salute, and one of them slung Jul over his shoulder before walking away. Urza. In the hopes of catching a sight of Naruto's return, Urza continued to watch the ocean toward the tower. Suddenly, she noticed him riding a wave toward them like if it were nothing. Naruto, as soon as he stepped onto the boat, Urza joyfully yelled and threw herself at him. "Urza. Are you okay?" Naruto looked at her closed eye and asked her in a frightened manner. He gave her a tight hug in response to her statement. "Yeah, I'm fine now thanks to you for giving me your eye. But you didn't have to do it, you know." She blushed as Naruto muttered into her ear, "Stupid, of course if I cared about you too much, as to let you go on living with only one eye. You need it more than me." And then she embraced him again, sobbing into his bare chest and repeatedly mumbling thank you. So, we're at last free, how with his snake wound around his neck, Cobra questioned him. All he said was yes. There was just silence for the next few minutes, until he turned to see all of the emancipated slaves sobbing and embracing one another in celebration of their eventual freedom. Happy one shouted, and everyone others soon followed. Seeing everyone begin to dance, laugh, cry, and celebrate at being free at last made Naruto grin. Now, Naruto-sama, what one slave inquired. Stop referring to me as Sama. Naruto's head grew unnaturally large, and a vein appeared on the right side of his forehead. He took a few more deep breaths until he had calmed himself, and then he turned to face the 3 boats that were awaiting his next command. Our destination is Fairy Tail, Naruto yelled. While everyone shouted with joy, Rob in the back of the boat merely grinned and giggled. Naruto, you've really grown nicely. Evening time. Because he was the one driving and because he liked stargazing, Naruto remained up much later than the others. Knowing that everyone he cared about was once again free, made him grin as he watched them all sleep. Naruto, isn't it a lovely night? Rob's voice echoed into the darkness. Yeah, it is. It's even more lovely now that we know we're all free, Naruto replied, smiling briefly at Rob. So, Fairy Tail. Rob leaned on the railing and asked. Yes, I did make a commitment to join your former guild, didn't I? Yes, but how are you going to handle the rest of them? Well, I should have all of my magic power by the time we land, and since I would never be able to return to my mother, she gave me all of her priceless gems and jewels, so I suppose I can give some to them and let them start over wherever they want. Rob merely gave him a startled look before letting out a sigh and grinning. You truly are unique, aren't you, Naruto? For a while, neither spoke, simply savoring their first night of independence in a long time. Naruto? Was Ursa's quiet voice, which shook them out of their quiet. As Rob went down below to see how the little ones were doing, he said, I'll leave you two alone for now. Hey Ursa, how are you? When Naruto noticed her standing directly beside him, he asked her. Before she could say anything further, she felt a slight pinch on her forehead. Better now that I know that I'm free. Look Naruto, I'm sorry you had to give me your A. Naruto smiled as he said to her, Stupid Ursa, you have nothing to regret. It's like I told you I would do it all over again if it meant saving you or anyone I care about. So don't keep it a secret. Show everyone your new eye and tell them what I would do for a friend of yours. Before turning to face him and examining his closed right eye, Ursa simply stroked her own closed eye. Eventually, she grinned at him and slowly opened her right eye, revealing her now sky blue eye that contrasted sharply with her brown left eye. Look, you look even more gorgeous now. Naruto chuckled before witnessing Ursa embrace him and sob against his breast. Thank you, Naruto, for being my friend, Ursa exclaimed into his chest. Before seeing that she was about to nod off, Naruto remained silent and allowed her to weep uncontrollably. As he went to put Ursa to sleep, he told the other guy who was approaching him to take over. He couldn't stop staring at Ursa as he made his way to the small hammock he had down below. He couldn't help but smile because she looked so adorable sleeping in his arms. No one will ever harm you again while I'm around, so don't worry, Ursa. Rob's words almost gave him a heart attack and forced him to drop Ursa. Of course, I will help with that. Old man, don't surprise people, Naruto practically yelled at him. I apologize, but I didn't want to ruin your little moment. The lookouts also report seeing land 10 to 20 minutes away. Naruto hissed, already, but don't tell me we were this close to land, and no one ever bothered to look for us. We've only been at sea for about 4 hours. Calm down, child. What's done is done for the time being. How about you put Ursa to bed and come get her when we're all on the ground? Naruto gave a nod and proceeded to their small storage area, which he converted into a space for them and other people. After that, Naruto turned left and headed directly for the summit, where he noticed that, indeed, there was land in the distance with what appeared to be several bright lights all around. Almost everyone leaped from the boats and into the sand, as the ship struck the shore after an almost excruciating half-hour. The young children began to play with it, and most of them jumped into the sea to enjoy the cool water that washed away all of their dirt. After leaving, Naruto returned with Ursa and the children, who were all in awe with the sea, sand, and brilliant lights. Ursa unsuccessfully attempted to stop Nella, Anna, and Angel from plunging into the ocean. She even attempted to stop Sho and Cobra, his snake, from hurling sand at one another. Naruto merely chuckled as he observed Richard and Wally strolling around and occasionally picking up seashells. Simon and Racer remained by his side as though they were his shadow. You guys are aware that you can go have fun, aren't you? Naruto informed them. Simon added, but what if someone tries anything on you, Naruto? We can't let that happen on our watch. Naruto sighed, realizing that they wouldn't be leaving anytime soon. Alright, Naruto sighed. Rob and Naruto watched as the children played, and the elderly men and ladies joyfully splashed water at one another. After 1 hour, Naruto gathered them all after they had finished talking about it, and waited until they were all relaxed enough to listen. Alright, listen up, everyone. I know you're enjoying your freedom, but we need a plan of action for where to go next. If you all have somewhere to go back to, let us know right away, and we'll give you enough money to get there, Rob spoke aloud. They all turned to stare at Rob and Naruto after 10 minutes or so of whispers and muttering, with people gathering in groups to discuss it. The people grinned at him and replied, "We decided to go with you, Naruto-sama." Naruto simply nodded his head and smiled as they saw him extend his hands, and a moment later, a bag materialized out of thin air. "I'll give you everyone enough diamonds to go buy food and clothing for the trip to Magnolia Town, so everyone should queue up." Before long, everyone was waiting in line, and Naruto was providing enough money for everyone to purchase food and clothing. Naruto instructed them to gather near the town's north exit, after they had all received their fair amount of money. As they all departed, Naruto took Ursa's hand and led her to explore the area with Milana, Sho, Simon, Racer, Wally, Richard, Angel, Cobra, and his snake. While they were looking around, Dad got Milana a yellow shirt with a cat paw print on it, and a toy kitten with a hat that said cat ears. She also purchased some dark green shorts for herself. Angel got herself a garment in white and blue with angel-like wings around her new shoes, around her wrists, and on her shoulders, accompanied with a headpiece featuring a white flower. Racer purchased black slacks, black boots, and a white t-shirt for himself. Cobra received a white coat with brown fur, light gray trousers, a white t-shirt, and gray boots. Simon was dressed simply in white slacks with a black belt, a turban, and a mask over his mouth, while Wally and Richard were dressed casually. Sho said it looked good and got a busboy outfit. Ursa received a navy blue knee-length skirt and a white long-sleeved shirt. Her brown boots, armor, and black slacks underneath caused Naruto to raise an eyebrow, but that was all. Additionally, Naruto purchased a sword for her, promising to show her how to use it later. In addition to sporting sandals and black pants, Naruto chose to forego a shirt. They wondered why Rob himself simply went as he always did, desiring nothing new. Now that they were out, Angel and Milana only wanted chocolate and candies, so Naruto and the others walked for an additional hour to get meals. Once they had everything they needed, they began to move toward the meeting location, and waited for 10 more minutes. When they noticed that people were beginning to arrive, Naruto stood up and grinned at everyone before speaking. "Then we're heading to Magnolia Town, and our future, that is, to Fairy Tail." Having stated that, they all began to move in Magnolia's direction, with Rob leading the way as he had a map and knew where it was. This marked the beginning of their free life, and the biggest adventure lay ahead.